Dr. Scott Kaufman, history chair, Francis Marion University, is here. We were joking around about kids and their potential spouses. And Scott is, he's a typical mean, nasty liberal because he says he wishes that, the first boy my daughter takes seriously comes into my home with a Clemson Tiger baseball cap and a Barack Obama Hope and Change T-shirt. That's how liberals are.
Ouch.
They wish despair upon
I
their
couldn't do the
opponents.
Clemson. I'm not that cruel.
Fair enough. Before we go down the road of disagreeing on whatever it is we'll disagree about, you have something that you're proud of, and you should be very proud of it. And Scott, you think this is about you and your talent, and your writing, and your research. In all honesty, if you go back and check the track record of Good Morning PD Live 95, we have been the launching pad to prosperity and publicity. If you go back to Gavin Jackson, Gavin was a menial reporter. So, just pillaring around and, doing the best he could, came on Good Morning PD Live 95. Next thing, he's got a big-time job. John Sweeney, the self-proclaimed bloodhound of justice, came on the show. He was but a fledgling reporter, trying to hang on by the skin of his teeth, coming up with crazy things like the bloodhound of justice. We launched him to an amazing career. And here you are, just a chair of a history department at one of our uber-liberal institutions of higher learning. And we turn you into one of the most noted authors in modern America. I say that sarcastically. In all seriousness, congratulations on your book, and congratulations on being invited to basically talk about or speak about your book at the Ford Presidential Library, and you won't be here next week because of that.
Right. Next Tuesday, your viewers will not get to hear my melodic voice. I will be in Michigan. I'm going to the Ford Museum first and the Ford Library after that. I'm giving talks on the Ford book, and I'm excited to say that C-SPAN will be taping my talk at the Ford Museum. So as soon as I know when that's going to be on C-SPAN, I'll definitely let everybody here know.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
And I mean that sincerely. As much as we disagree on Trump and some other things, I respect you, and I really am proud and happy for the way this book has really energized people within the Gerald Ford community. And I say every president. I would be in the Jefferson community. I like to know as much as I can. We all have favorite presidents, and there's a lot of people who Gerald Ford is somebody who they believe America owes a great deal of gratitude, and it probably cost him a presidential election, and that is the Nixon pardon.
Yes, and it's interesting. I think one of the things I'll bring up in the talk is we're kind of seeing a replay of some of this stuff. Talk of pardons, for instance. Time Magazine just last week had an article whether Trump might pardon Michael Cohen before there's any kind of an indictment brought, just like Gerald Ford gave Richard Nixon a pardon before there was an indictment brought against Richard Nixon. So,
okay, I'm going to make life tough for you for the next 3 or 4 minutes, and then I'm going to kind of shift gears, and you'll have the upper hand. Okay. We're in the middle of an FBI investigation, a special counsel appointed by the Department of Justice. There were broad parameters. We don't really know because we've only seen the redacted memo authorizing for the special counsel investigation. We had a judge rebuke some of the Manafort case on Friday. That's kind of we'll call it a quasi-win for the Trump team. But I want you to try and understand, or try and help me understand this dynamic. When we found out Trump was under investigation, his approval ratings were 31, 32, 33%. Today, a year and a month or two later, his approvals RCP average yesterday was 44.4. Today it's 44.2. What do you attribute? I'm not trying to be argumentative, and I'm not trying to put you in a corner, but when you look at the realities of public sentiment, there does seem to be a swing in the mood of the American public. How long does this thing take, and what are we really trying to get to the bottom of? And Trump has benefited in a fairly substantial way in the public believing he's doing a better job as American president.
Well, again, this could be a variety of things. As I mentioned before, part of it could be the rally around the flag, or in this case, rally around the president mentality. Our president's in trouble, and if you're a Trump supporter, you're going to rally around him and still be able to protect the president from whether it be the liberals or the deep state or whatever it is you think is out there trying to undermine his effort to quote-unquote drain the swamp. The news regarding the economy has been good. That could be something that's helping him out. It could also be, I mean, there are people who are supporting him because they feel that he says he's going to do something and he does it. He said that, for instance, he was going, he's probably going to, he's been supportive of Israel. He said he's going to go ahead and not continue to support the Iran plan, which he said he was going to do. He says he's going to be tough on immigration, and if you're one of his supporters, he seems to be doing that. So he seems to be a guy who says, I plan on doing something for my base, and I am going to do what my base is asking me to do.
Okay, you're right. He's done what he said he was elected to do, popular or unpopular. Has the Mueller team created problems of its own in the way they've been, or appear to be very random in, and I hesitate to use the word witch hunt, but when we get to a place that Trump's approvals are increasing and the trust the public has in this investigation is decreasing. We looked at the Monmouth poll, a Reuters poll, and a Marist poll, who all say the public today are a little less trusting of the Mueller investigation. How much of this is about Donald Trump and the accomplishments and, I do what I say I'm going to do, that matter-of-factness that we've come to like or dislike about this president, and how much of it is about the investigation does appear to be very broad and inexact? Well,
I mean, one of the things we have to do with an investigation like this, and the Mueller team's been very good about this, keeping things very much under wraps. We do not know all the information they have, although at least two of Trump's aides who have been brought in to testify before Mueller's team have said that the Mueller's team knows quite a bit, more than of course they're letting out right now. I would jump back to Watergate and point out there was a time in the Watergate investigation where it seemed like as though all the leads were running out, that it was likely Nixon was going to get away with obstruction of justice. Then all of a sudden there was a break in the case. We don't know what Mueller has. We don't know what information's out there. If it turns out that there is a smoking gun out there, that could turn the table. But yeah, I mean, I will freely admit that if you're a Trump supporter and you believe the president is the victim of a conspiracy driven by the deep state or the establishment or the intelligence agencies or Mueller or the Justice Department, sure, you're going to rally around him and say this is just another effort by one or more of these groups to undermine a president who's trying to change the way this country's run.
He hires Rudy Giuliani. So you got a New York street fighter as president, and now you've got a New York street fighter as his lead attorney. Rudy's an accomplished pundit, political candidate. Most people, liberal and conservative, believe he did a fairly good job of governing New York City. If you're conservative, you think he did a wonderful job. Even the liberals, I've heard say, God did a pretty good job in governing the city of New York. They seem to be employing a scorched earth policy. This is equally about Donald Trump and Bob Mueller. It's almost like Apollo Creed and Rocky Balboa. There's a personality attached to the investigation. I went back and read some writings of Watergate and even the Clinton impeachment and I guess to some degree prosecuting. It was never made about the other side. It was always the president playing defense, the president defending himself, defending what he said, his lawyers defending. The Trump team, in typical Trump fashion, seems to have taken a very unconventional way of going about it. And indeed, they're trying to cast doubt upon the Mueller investigation. They're kind of, sort of, going scorched earth. What do you think of that strategy?
Well, I mean, they're going to the attack, and that's one thing Trump says. And he has said, if you attack me, I attack back 10 times harder. What I'm seeing here, to be totally honest with you, is incompetence. A couple of things here. Number one, if you believe the media is out to get Trump, get out in front of the media. Instead, what's happening here is there's this drip coming out of the administration. For instance, Stormy Daniels. First, Trump says, I knew nothing about the payment. Then Trump says, well, yes, there was a payment. And then there's additional changes to the story made. Or why Trump fired Comey. First it was because the Rosenstein memo. Then it was because the Russia investigation. Then it was because, as Giuliani said, that Comey would not say that Trump was not one of the people who was being targeted by the investigation. They're not getting out in front of this. And so when you have this drip, it gives those individuals who say there's something that's being hidden here all the more ammunition to say something is going on. And then Giuliani gets on these various shows and makes statements that he has to retract or that the president has to correct. And Giuliani himself says, I only had part of the story. My gosh, if you're going to have somebody going out there and speaking on your behalf, you better make sure the person has at least the full story.
But, Scott, I think the public have gotten to a point, okay, we were talking about collusion. We were talking about obstruction of justice. Now we're talking about an adult film star and whether or not he paid her a specific amount of money to keep her mouth shut. How does the special counsel win if that ends up being the centerpiece? I mean, the majority of newsworthiness, and I get the fact that the news is in the business of viewership and clicks, and salaciousness tends to drive revenue. But how do you defend a special counsel that was set out to find out whether or not Trump colluded with some Russian surrogates to manipulate the outcome of the election? And now we're spending a lot of time, energy, and effort in regards to the special counsel as to whether or not there's some violation of campaign finance law. That there's never been before in the history of our country a special counsel investigating campaign finance.
Well, let's go back to Kenneth Starr. I mean, he was originally looking into Whitewater. Then all of a sudden it becomes Monica Lewinsky. And we find out the president made statements that, as far as I'm concerned, amounted to perjury. We do not know what might be out there with regard to obstruction of justice in the Russia investigation. I mean, Trump's own statements, one of them being that he fired Comey because of the Russia investigation, that right there could open the door to obstruction of justice. But if it turns out that campaign finance laws were violated as well, again, we're talking about a major violation of the law that in itself would justify some form of legal action.
But, Scott, we don't investigate campaign finance with special counsels. If we end up in a place that the charge against Trump, if there is some, and Giuliani denies it. I mean, Giuliani says we paid this lawyer retainer. That money comes out of the retainership of which we pay the lawyer. Now the facts will speak for themselves at some point in time. But what I'm arguing is we've been told for a year by the other side that there's reason to suspect Trump colluded with Russia, and that's the reason Hillary Clinton is not the American president. I mean, in essence, that was the commentary that we were told immediately following the election. There's not a smidgen of evidence yet. You're right. There are things we don't know and things we do know. But right now, the center of debate is whether or not he paid a lady to keep her mouth shut about an affair a week or so before the election. And I just got to believe that the majority of independents, I'm not talking about the never-Trumpers nor the Trumpians. I'm talking about the people in the middle that don't watch CNN, don't watch Fox News, don't watch MSNBC, don't listen to talk radio. I just believe Trump wins that battle in overwhelming fashion if we get to a place that the lion's share of the conversation is whether or not a porn star was paid an amount of money to keep her mouth shut because this billionaire real estate developer who got elected president had an affair with her and didn't want his wife or family or friends or voters, for that matter, to find out about it. I think that is devastating to even the concept and idea of a special counsel. And I'll make a prediction. I think if that's where we end up, there will be a dramatic revisiting of the power and authority vested in a special counsel.
I would make two comments here. Number one, again, we don't know what else is out there with regard to...
But we have to speculate because we're in the opinion business.
Right. But the other thing I would say is Amy Kremer was on Aaron Burnett Out Front last night. For those who don't know who she is the founder of Women for Trump. And the thing she argued was, we don't care whether Trump had an affair. All we care about is how is the economy doing? Is he upholding his campaign promises? And as far as she was concerned, he's doing a fine job, which I think says something about where a lot of these people are coming from with regard to the Stormy Daniels investigation. They're seeing this as Trump being immoral, not doing anything illegal, just doing something immoral. Well, immorality nowadays, okay, fine, big deal. So he had an affair. It's awful. He shouldn't have done it, but it shouldn't disqualify him from office. That, however, is different from, did he in fact make a payoff to this person? Now, you're talking about, well, there's a retainer fee. When was the payoff made? It seems to have been just before the election. And if it can be shown that indeed there were ties to the election, then that would fall under campaign finance laws and would indeed be a violation of the law.